The air in Paris's grandest auction house was thick with anticipation. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the elite gathered in velvet chairs, their whispers buzzing like static. It was the event of the season, a rare collection of Renaissance art, each piece a whisper of history, up for grabs to the highest bidder. The auctioneer's gavel struck, and lot after lot sold for millions, the room electric with wealth and secrets. But at 11:07 p.m., a scream shattered the elegance. A woman in a sapphire gown lay slumped in the back row, her lifeless hand clutching a painting that wasn't in the catalogue, a haunting portrait of a child, its eyes scratched out. Her blood pooled on the marble floor, staining the canvas red. The crowd froze, the auctioneer stammered, and the lights flickered as security sealed the doors. Who was she? Why was she holding a painting no one had seen? And why, in her final moment, did she scrawl a single word in her own blood? Mother. The Parisian auction house stood like a shadowed cathedral under the midnight rain. Its opulent facade now, a crime scene framed by yellow police tape. Detective Claire Moreau lingered at the edge of the chaos, her trench coat slick with drizzle, her gaze fixed on the ambulance where the woman in the sapphire gown lay beneath a sheet. The painting she'd clutched, a haunting portrait of a child with scratched out eyes, was bagged as evidence, its mystery clawing at Claire's mind. Death was her trade, but this case felt personal. The word blood, scrawled in the victim's blood, stirred ghosts of Claire's own past, her sister's disappearance. A mother buried without closure. She pushed the memories down. She had a job to do. Inside the auction house was a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. The police had cleared the guests, but their murmurs lingered, rumors of a cursed painting, a bidder with no name. Claire's partner, Inspector Julien Dubois, approached, his notepad brimming with notes. Victim's name is Elise Vasseur. 28, no criminal record, no reason to be here, he said, his voice hushed. She wasn't on the guest list, and that painting, not in any catalogue. The curator, Madame Isabelle Vasseur, swears she's a mystery to her. Claire's eyes shifted. To Isabelle, the auction house's revered curator, standing near the evidence table. Her silver hair was flawless, her black dress immaculate, but her hands betrayed a tremble as she spoke to an officer. Claire knew the type, polished, untouchable, hiding something. Let's talk to her, Claire said, her tone razor sharp. Isabelle's office was a shrine to art walls, lined with sketches, shelves sagging with catalogues of masterpieces. She sat behind a mahogany desk, her composure a brittle mask. This is a tragedy, she began, her words smooth but hollow. Elise Vasseur was a stranger to me. I run a legitimate operation. That painting must have been smuggled in. Her gaze flicked sideways, a flicker of unease. Claire leaned in, her voice cutting. A bidder dies with an unregistered painting, and it's a coincidence. Isabelle's explanation, provenance checks, appraisals, armed guards, was meticulous, but too perfect, like a script. Claire pressed, who had access to the auction floor beforehand. Isabelle named low-level staff, but her pause sowed doubt. At the precinct, Claire and Julien dissected the evidence. The painting was a 16th century portrait, likely Italian, but its provenance was a dead end, no record in any collection. The child's defaced face, smeared with Elise's blood, suggested deliberate vandalism. The autopsy dropped a bombshell. Elise had been poisoned with a rare neurotoxin, dosed hours before her collapse, pointing to premeditation. Claire's gut churned. This was no impulse. Killed. Julian pulled up Elise's financials. She was a freelance art restorer, barely surviving. No way she could afford this auction. Someone got her in. Security footage was a blind spot. Cameras near the back row had malfunctioned for 20 minutes during the auction. Someone had planned this with precision. A tip line offered a lead. An anonymous caller claimed a similar painting surfaced at a Marseille private sale in Marseille, linked to a dealer known as Le Corbeau. Claire dug into rumors of an underground auction, circuit exclusive, illegal, trading stolen art looted from wars. Private estates, museums, sold with no questions asked. The profits were astronomical, often fueling darker crimes. Was Isabelle Vasseur tied to this? They tailed Isabelle to a discreet Montmartre cafe, where she handed a flash drive to a man in a tailored suit, Pierre Dubois, a known art broker with mob ties. Claire, hidden behind a newspaper, watched the quick exchange. Julian snapped photos, his jaw tight. If she's selling stolen art, this is bigger than one murder, he whispered. Back at the station, Claire scoured Isabelle's background. She was a pillar of the art world decades, curating for Paris's elite, a widower with a tragic past. But her son, Elise, had been estranged for years, a fact she'd hidden. Claire's breath caught. Elise Vasseur, victim was Isabelle's sister. The word blood took on a chilling weight. Why hide their bond? Claire stormed to Isabelle's Seine-side apartment. Why didn't you say Elise was your sister? She demanded. Claire. Isabelle's face crumpled, but her eyes stayed dry. We hadn't spoken in years, she said. She hated my work, my ambition. I didn't know she'd be there. Her voice wavered, but Claire sensed a performance. She pushed, mentioning Le Corbeau and the underground auctions. Isabelle's composure cracked. You're chasing phantoms, Detective Vasseur. But Claire wasn't fooled. A search warrant. For Isabelle's office unearthed encrypted files detailing transactions for artworks never publicly sold. One listed a child portrait sold for 10 million euros to a Dubai buyer, the painting Elise held. Traces of the neurotoxin were found in a storage room accessible only to senior staff. Isabelle was their prime suspect, but the crime's scope was vast. Interpol confirmed Le Corbeau's auctions weren't just art, they laundered money for a human trafficking ring, moving refugees across borders in containers labeled as art transport. Claire's stomach turned. Elise, an art restorer, likely stumbled onto this, perhaps restoring stolen pieces. Had she crashed the auction to expose her mother? Claire revisited Elise's Montparnasse flat, a cluttered haven of paint and journals. One entry, dated a month ago, read, "She's not who I thought. The auctions aren't just art. I have to stop her." A photo of a younger Elise and Isabelle, smiling at a gallery, stabbed at Claire's heart. Her own sister, Amélie, vanished. At 15, leaving only a note, "I can't stay." That unresolved pain fueled Claire now. Tech specialist Sophie cracked the flash drive, revealing buyers across continents and drop points for human cargo. The painting wasn't just evidence, it symbolized lives traded in Isabelle's deals. Julian's voice crackled through Claire's earpiece. Le Corbeau meeting a buyer tonight at a La Défense warehouse. The warehouse, a rusted hulk, reeked of oil. Claire and Julian crouched behind crates as Pierre Le Corbeau handed a sculpture crate to a Russian-accented man. Sophie's thermal scans showed people inside live, but fading. Claire's rage flared. SWAT stormed in, arresting both men. The crate held 3 women, bound and hollow-eyed. Pierre claimed Isabelle was the mastermind, but had no proof. "She's untouchable," he sneered. Claire confronted Isabelle again, flash drive in hand. Isabelle's face paled, but she denied everything. A text from Elise's phone, sent hours before her death. "I know what you're doing, Mother. I'm ending it tonight," broke her facade. Isabelle's hands shook, fear in her eyes. The crime crystallized. Isabelle ran an underground auction ring, selling stolen art to fund a trafficking network. Elise, her sister, uncovered it, likely through her restoration work, and died trying to stop her. But why kill her own flesh and blood? Claire's family, ghosts, her sister's loss, her mother's unanswered death made it personal. Standing where Elise died. The marbles still faintly red, Claire clutched the painting's photo. The scratched-out eyes felt like Elise's plea. Isabelle wasn't just a curator. She was a linchpin in a machine of greed and suffering. The case was far from closed, but Claire vowed to tear apart Paris's art world for justice. For Elise, and maybe for herself. The Parisian dawn was grey and heavy, the Seine reflecting a city that hid its secrets well. Detective Claire Moreau sat at her cluttered desk in the precinct. The photo of the defaced painting, its child's eyes, scratched out, pinned to her board like a taunt. Elise Vassar's murder wasn't just a crime. It was a puzzle with pieces scattered across Paris's glittering art world and its darkest underbelly. Claire's coffee had gone cold, but her resolve burned hot. Elise had been poisoned, clutching a painting tied to an underground auction ring run by her own mother, Isabelle Laurent. The flash drive, the trafficking network, the neurotoxinate, all pointed to a conspiracy far bigger than one death. But Claire, disgraced after a botched case years ago, needed the truth, not just for Elise, but to silence her own demons. Her sister, Amelia's disappearance, her mother's death without answers, Claire dug into Elise's past, her team scouring records. Elise had been a prodigy, trained by Isabelle in art restoration. But their bond fractured when Isabelle's ambition consumed her. After her husband's death, Isabelle vanished for a year, leaving young Elise with relatives. When she returned, she was colder, richer, tied to shady investors. Elise, resentful, cut ties, forging her own path. But her restoration work brought her back into Isabelle's orbit, handling pieces for the underground auctions. Claire found a hidden notebook in Elise's flat, detailing artworks she'd traced to war-torn regions and stolen collections. The child portrait was the final Strot's theft had left a Venetian family destitute. Elise's last entry read, "She's my mother, but she's a monster. I'll end this at the auction." Claire's heart ached. Elise's courage mirrored her own drive to solve Amelia's disappearance, a wound that never healed. She returned to the auction house, standing where Elise died, the marble floor a ghost of blood. The painting's scratched-out eyes felt personal, now Elise's defiance, blinding the child to her mother's sins. Claire's team re-examined the video, isolating the figure in the dark coat. A partial reflection in a glass panel revealed a glimpse of silver hair, Isabelle's trademark. Claire's stomach dropped. Had Isabelle herself delivered the fatal dose? She confronted Pierre Dubois again, his cell reeking of fear. Elise was Isabelle's daughter, Claire said, watching. His reaction, Pierre's eyes widened, then narrowed. "She didn't tell me that," he muttered. But Elise was trouble. She came to me with proof records, photos, even a buyer list. I told Isabel she was digging. I didn't know she'd kill her. Claire's blood ran cold. Pierre's fear of Isabel was real, but his story shifted blame. Was he covering his own role? Asterisk, a new lead surfaced. A witness, a waiter from the auction, who'd overheard Isabel arguing with a woman in a sapphire gown before the event. She said, "You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous," the waiter recalled. The woman replied, "You can't stop me." Claire's theory solidified. Elise had confronted her mother, revealing her plan. Isabel, cornered, had acted to protect her empire or herself. The neurotoxin, traced to Isabel's dark web purchase, sealed the case. But why kill her own child? Claire's own family losses Amelia's note. "I can't stay," made the betrayal cut deeper. Asterisk, Claire's team raided Isabel's safe house, finding a burner phone with a single outgoing call the night of the auction to Pierre. The call log showed Isabel ordering him to handle the problem. Pierre hadn't acted alone. Isabel had orchestrated Elise's death, using her daughter's trust to lure her to the auction. The painting was Elise's gambit, smuggled in to expose the ring, but Isabel had turned it into her grave. Asterisk, as Claire prepared to charge Isabel, a final piece fell into place. Sophie found a deleted email from Elise to Isabel, sent days before the auction. "I know everything, Lumiere, the trafficking, the art. Meet me at the auction or I go public." Isabel's reply was chilling. "You're my daughter, but you've chosen your path." Claire's hands shook. Elise hadn't just infiltrated the auction sheet, given her mother a chance to confess, only to be betrayed. Asterisk, Claire stood outside Isabel's cell, the weight of the truth crushing her. Elise Vassar, the bidder in the sapphire gown, wasn't a victim of chance. She was Isabel Lawrence's estranged daughter, a hero who'd risked everything to expose her mother's crimes. The revelation wasn't just a twist, it was a tragedy. A mother's greed destroying her own flesh and blood. Claire's resolve hardened. She'd see Isabel face justice for Elise, and for the ghosts she carried. Asterisk, the Parisian sky was bruised with clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. As Detective Claire Moreau stood outside the interrogation room, inside, Isabel Lawrence sat cuffed to the table, her silver hair disheveled, her once impeccable poise reduced to a fragile shell. The truth had unraveled. Elise Vassar, the bidder in the sapphire gown, was Isabel's estranged daughter, poisoned at the auction to silence her attempt to expose her mother's underground ring. The stolen art, the human trafficking, the neurotoxinal roads led to Isabel, a curator who'd built an empire on greed and betrayal. But the why lingered like a wound in Claire's chest. Why would a mother kill her own daughter? Claire's own ghosts, her sister Amélie's disappearance, her mother's unanswered death, made this case more than a job. It was a mirror to her pain, and she needed answers. Asterisk, Claire entered the room, her face a mask of steel despite the ache in her heart. The evidence was ironclad. The flash drive's buyer lists, the neurotoxin traced to Isabel's dark web purchase, the auction house's tampered cameras, and Elise's email begging her mother to confess. Claire slid a photo of the defaced painting the child with scratched out eyes across the table. "Elise died holding this," she said, her voice low and sharp. "She was your daughter, and you poisoned her. Tell me why." Isabel's eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, met the photo, then dropped. For the first time, Claire saw something human flicker in her grief, or guilt. Asterisk, "I didn't mean for it to end like this," Isabel whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. You think I wanted her dead? She was my everything. Claire's jaw tightened. Then why? She was exposing your auctions, your trafficking ring. Was your empire worth her life? Isabel's hands trembled, cuffed wrists clinking against the table. It wasn't about the empire, she said, tears spilling. It was about saving her. Claire froze, her mind racing. Isabel's words were a crack in the case's foundation. Saving her, she repeated, leaning forward. Isabel's composure shattered, her body shaking as sobs broke free. Elise was sick, she confessed, her voice raw. When she was a child, she had leukemia. The treatments were endless, the bills crushing. My husband was dead, I was drowning in debt. The art world, it's a viper's nest. No one helps you unless you play their game. She wiped her face, smearing mascara. I started the auctions to pay for her care. Stolen art, black market buyers. It was dirty money, but it kept her alive. Claire's heart thudded. Her own memories of Los Amelia's note. I can stay surging. You're saying you built this ring for Elise? Isabel nodded, her eyes distant. The first painting I sold, a looted Degas paid. For her chemotherapy, she went into remission, but the debts never stopped. The buyers, men like Le Corbeau, pulled me in deeper. They wanted more art, then people. I didn't know about the trafficking at first, I swear. By the time I realized, I was trapped. If I stopped, they'd kill us both. Claire's stomach churned. The trafficking ring, the lives destroyed, all stemmed from a mother's desperation. Elise found out, Claire said, piecing it together. She was restoring your stolen art, wasn't she? She saw the truth. Isabel's sob was guttural. She was brilliant, my Elise. She traced the paintings, found the trafficking links. She came to me, begged me to stop. I told her it was too dangerous, that I was protecting her, but she wouldn't listen. She said she'd expose me at the auction. Claire's mind flashed to Elisa's journal. She's my mother, but she's a monster. The sapphire ring, the heirloom Elise wore, was a symbol of their broken bond. So you poisoned her, Claire said, her voice steady despite the rage inside. Isabel's head snapped up, eyes wild. No, I didn't. I tried to warn her. I begged her to leave the auction. But Le Corbeau, he heard her threats. He said she was a liability, that the buyers wanted her gone. I didn't know he'd act so fast. Her voice broke. I gave him the toxin to scare her, to make her sick, not kill her. I thought I could save her, get her out of Paris, but he used too much. Claire's blood ran cold. Isabel hadn't wielded the needle, but she'd set the stage. You gave him the poison, she said, her voice a blade. You knew what he'd do. Isabel collapsed into sobs, her body folding like a broken doll. I loved her, she cried. I built everything for her, and I lost her. I'm a monster, just like she said. Claire's resolve wavered, her own grief for Amélie surfacing. She wanted to hate Isabel, but the pain in her eyes was too raw, too familiar. The precinct's morgue was cold, the air sharp with antiseptic. Claire stood by Elise's body, now prepared for release, the sapphire gown replaced by a white sheet. Isabel, escorted in cuffs, was allowed a final moment under Claire's supervision. The curator fell to her knees, her sobs echoing off the sterile walls. Elise, my baby, she whispered, reaching for her daughter's hand, the sapphire ring glinting under the harsh lights. I did it all for you. I'm so sorry. She clutched the hand, her tears falling onto the sheet. Forgive me. Claire's throat tightened. Her own losses. Amélie, her mother mirroring the scene. She turned away, unable to watch. As officers pulled Isabelle up, her cries fading down the hall. Asterisk, the trial was swift. Isabelle's confession, combined with the flash drive, the toxin evidence, and Pierre's testimony, dismantled the auction ring. Le Corbeau and his buyers were arrested, the trafficking network crumbling under Interpol's raids. But for Claire, victory was hollow. She stood at Elise's grave, the Parisian rain soaking her coat, the scratched-out painting's image burned into her mind. Elise had been a hero, risking everything to stop her mother's crimes, only to die for it. Claire-esque fingers traced Amelia's locket, a keepsake from her sister's disappearance. "I'm still looking for you," she whispered, her tears mixing with the rain. Back at the precinct, Claire pinned Elise's case file to the closed board, her hands steady but her heart heavy. The art world would recover, but the scars of betrayal, mother against daughter, greed against love would linger. Claire vowed to keep digging, not just for Elise, but for Amélie, for answers she might never find. As she left, the rain stopped, and a faint light broke through the clouds, a fleeting promise of peace.